The first thing I heard wasn't the wind or the lake, it was laughter. Loud, careless laughter echoing from inside my lake house. My house. I froze on the porch. Grocery bags, still in hand as someone turned up the music. Through the window, I saw faces strangers dancing under my lights, and right in the center stood my brother's wife, drink in hand, smirking like she owned the place. When she spotted me, her smile twisted. "Why is this stupid Leech here? Get out!" she yelled. I didn't argue. I just smiled, said, "Okay." But what happened after that, she never saw coming. My name's Anna Monroe. I'm 36, a dentist in Denver, and for the last 10 years I've worked myself numb, keeping other people's smiles perfect while forgetting what peace feels like. My coworkers joke that I'm the backup generator. I keep things running when everything else shuts down. When my boss's wife got sick 2 months ago, I took over his entire schedule. I handled patients all day and spreadsheets all night until my back screamed and my eyes blurred. By Friday, I was running on caffeine and stubbornness, dreaming of one thing, my lake house in Evergreen. That cabin isn't big or fancy, but it's mine. I bought it 3 years ago, the first thing I ever owned outright. It smells like cedar and old coffee. Mornings there are cold and blue. You can see mist sliding over the lake. It's the only place I can hear my thoughts without someone asking for something. That someone is usually my family. My parents live an hour away, retired, cheerful, and perpetually worried about my brother, Liam. He's 31, charming, inconsistent, and forever between jobs. When he got married 2 years ago, Mom called me crying, saying he didn't have enough money to give his new wife, Vanessa, the wedding she deserved. "She's a lovely girl, Anna. She wants things nice," Mom had said. So I wrote a check for $18,000. No one even blinked. After that, it never stopped. Liam's rent when his job fell through, Vanessa's car payments because she couldn't drive something that old, even groceries once when they wanted to host Thanksgiving but didn't have the budget. I kept saying yes because that's what good sisters do. Or so I told myself. Vanessa was beautiful in the glossy way of someone who believes beauty is currency. Long lashes, perfect manicure, that polished laugh that feels rehearsed. From the first dinner after their honeymoon, she treated me like staff smiling when she needed something, rolling her eyes when she didn't. "You work too much, Anna," she'd say, sipping wine at my table. "You should try having a life instead of fixing teeth." I'd smile back, pretending it didn't sting. The worst part wasn't her words, it was my parents' silence. They'd look at their plates, pretending not to hear. If I ever mentioned how Vanessa talked to me, Mom would sigh. "She's young, honey. Don't take it to heart, be patient with her." Dad would nod. "You know your brother's fragile, try not to make waves." So I learned to swallow it all, to play the calm, capable one, the reliable one, the invisible one. But in the last few months, the exhaustion had sharpened into something else. I started noticing how often my phone buzzed only when someone needed money, how every favor I gave was followed by another, how the only time my name came up at family dinners was when a bill needed paying. That's why that Friday mattered so much. It was supposed to be mine, my weekend. No calls, no emergencies, no one's problems but my own. I left work late, picked up pasta, wine, and chocolate from the grocery store, humming to the radio like it was a victory song. The drive to Evergreen felt like escaping gravity. I remember thinking, if I can just get to the lake, everything will feel normal again. I didn't know that by the time I parked outside my cabin, normal would be gone. When people talk about favoritism in families, they always make it sound small, like an eye roll at dinner or a forgotten birthday. But it's bigger than that. It's the quiet way your parents' tone softens when they speak to one child and hardens when they turn to you. It's the way your success becomes invisible and someone else's mediocrity becomes potential. For me, that's how it's always been with Liam. I bought my own house. "Well, you never had kids, Anna. You can afford it. He missed 3 months of rent. He's trying, sweetie. I work 10-hour days. Don't overdo it. You'll make us worry. He slept till noon. He needs rest. He's under pressure." At first, I thought maybe I was imagining it, but the pattern repeated so many times, it became the rhythm of our family. Last Thanksgiving, when I brought a pumpkin pie, Vanessa announced she'd made a real one from scratch. Everyone praised her for hours. When I mentioned the wine I'd brought, Mom smiled politely and changed the subject. I remember standing there holding my own contribution, like it didn't exist. Still, I told myself that's family, you love them anyway. You forgive things they don't even realize they're doing. Then Liam started calling every month. Hey sis, rent's late again, can you help? I'd transfer the money and promise myself it would be the last time. It never was. Vanessa didn't work, said she was manifesting her next opportunity. I tried to give her credit for confidence, but it wasn't confidence, it was entitlement. The lake house was supposed to be the line I drew for myself, the one thing untouched by obligation. I'd even given my parents a set of keys, told them to use it whenever they needed a quiet weekend. When Liam asked for one too, I hesitated, but Mom said, it's his sister's house, not a stranger's. He won't break anything. I handed him a spare key. Maybe that was my first mistake, thinking family meant access. It started small, a missing bottle of wine, a throw blanket that vanished muddy footprints on the porch when I hadn't been there. I told myself I was imagining things, until one weekend in August I arrived to find a damp towel in the bathroom and 2 toothbrushes in the cup by the sink. I texted Liam. Were you at the house this week? He replied, yeah, just for a night. Hope that's okay. It wasn't, but I said it was. And that's the problem with people like me, we say okay. When it's not hoping, silence keeps the peace. So when I pulled up that October evening, saw those strange cars outside, and heard music pounding through my windows, I already knew. I just didn't want to believe it. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. My pulse climbed. I'd given everything to keep this family together, and somehow I was the outsider, the one intruding. I stepped out of the car, cold air biting at my face, and whispered to myself, not this time. The front door was unlocked. That alone made my stomach twist. I pushed it open and a wave of noise hit me. Music chatter, the crackle of laughter bouncing off the walls I painted myself. The smell of cheap perfume and beer hung heavy in the air. My lake house looked like a rental after spring break. 10 people were inside Vanessa's parents on the couch, a few cousins I'd never met. Someone stirring a pot in my kitchen. My kitchen. And in the middle of it all stood Vanessa, a glass of rosé in one hand, my linen shirt hanging off her shoulder like a trophy. When she saw me, her expression froze, then melted into a smirk. Well, look who showed up, she said, voice syrupy with wine. I looked around, waiting for Liam. He was there by the window, holding a beer, eyes glued to the floor. Not one person moved to greet me. I didn't know anyone was here, I said quietly. This is my weekend. Vanessa tilted her head. We have a key, she said loud enough for everyone to hear. We just thought we'd use the place for a little family getaway. You don't mind, do you? Something about the way she said we made my skin crawl. I set my grocery bag on the counter. I do, actually. You're all leaving tonight. This isn't a rental. A hush spread through the room. Someone turned down the music. Vanessa blinked, then laughed, a high, brittle sound that sliced the silence. Are you serious? We just got here. I felt everyone's eyes on me like I was the intruder. Vanessa's voice rose sharper now. You always have to ruin things, don't you? God. Liam, your sister is impossible. He said nothing. That's when she turned to her family, waving her drink like a conductor. Why is this stupid Leech here? Get out! For a second, I couldn't breathe. My ears rang. The word Leech echoed through me like something physical, a slap I couldn't block. I looked at her, her perfect hair, her glossy smile, and saw what she really meant. I was never family. I was a wallet with a heartbeat. The room waited for me to explode. I didn't. Instead, I smiled. It wasn't forced or shaky. It was calm, too calm. I picked up my car keys from the counter, met her gaze, and said, okay. Her grin widened victorious. Good, I'll leave. I finished voice steady. I walked past her, past my brother who still couldn't look at me, past the couch where her parents pretended to check their phones. Each step felt lighter than the last. Outside, the cold hit me full in the face. My hands shook as I unlocked my car, but not from sadness, not even rage, just clarity. As I backed down the drive, the house glowed behind me, full of noise and people who'd mistaken kindness for weakness. By the time I reached the highway, the music was gone, replaced by the hum of tires and the faint buzz in my chest that felt like awakening. At home, I unpacked the groceries. Wine, pasta, chocolate, set them on the counter, and stared at them for a long time. Then I made tea, sat down, and opened my banking app. Line after line, rent payments, car payments, transfers, gifts. More than $50,000 over 2 years. The next sip of tea was bitter, but it steadied me. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I just made a decision. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. The city outside my window was still gray and quiet, but something inside me had shifted, like a switch flipped overnight. I wasn't the exhausted, accommodating sister anymore. I was done. By 7, I was standing in line at the bank, coffee cooling in my hand. When it was my turn, I smiled at the teller. I'd like to remove someone from my emergency account. My voice was steady, almost cheerful. She typed, confirmed my name, and asked, "Who would you like to remove my brother Liam Monroe?" Click. 5 minutes later, he no longer had access to my money. From there, it was simple. I went home, logged into my accounts, and canceled every automatic payment linked to Liam or Vanessa. Their rent, their car loan, even the extra card I'd forgotten existed. Each click felt cleaner than the last, like cutting threads I hadn't realized were choking me. When I was done, I sat back in silence. No guilt, no shaking hands, just a quiet kind of peace. The following Friday, my phone rang. I let it buzz twice before answering. Anna. What the hell happened? Liam's voice cracked through the speaker. The landlord said the rent didn't go through. It didn't, I said. Why not? Because I stopped paying it. Silence. I could hear him breathing, waiting for me to laugh and say I was joking. I didn't. I also canceled your access to my emergency account, I added. And the car payments. Vanessa's right. He swore under his breath. You can't just... I interrupted. And I did. You should thank your wife for this. The line went dead. 10 seconds later, Vanessa's name flashed across my screen. I ignored it. She called again, then again. After the 5th call, the texts began paragraphs of venom, one after another. You're selfish. You're bitter. You're pathetic. You think you're better than everyone because you have money. I scrolled through them, one eyebrow raised. The last message stopped me. Family doesn't abandon family. I typed one line back. You did that when you told me to get out of my own house. Then I blocked her. The quiet that followed was glorious. A week later, my mom called. Honey, what's going on? Liam's very upset. He said you're cutting him off. Can't you just let it go? Vanessa was drunk. You know how she is. She wasn't just drunk, I said. She was honest. Please, Mom whispered. Let's not make this a war. I'm not making it anything, I replied. I'm ending it. For the first time in years, I hung up on her. That weekend, I drove back to Evergreen. The air was cold and sharp, the lake frozen around the edges. A locksmith met me in the driveway. While he changed the locks, I stood by the water, watching the faint sunlight scatter across the ice. When he handed me the new keys, I turned one over in my palm. It was lighter than I expected. No one else would ever use this place again. Not my parents, not Liam, and definitely not Vanessa. That night, I lit a fire in the fireplace and sat in my chair, the one by the window overlooking the dock. For the first time, the silence wasn't lonely. It was earned. By the following week, the calls stopped, but I knew the fallout had begun. I heard from a neighbor that Liam and Vanessa had been evicted. A small part of me wanted to feel sorry for them. I didn't, because revenge doesn't always look like fireworks. Sometimes it's just the sound of doors locking quiet final, and yours. 2 weeks passed before the first crack in their perfect image appeared. My mother called voice tight, whispering like she was confessing a sin. They've been evicted, she said. Your brother and Vanessa. The landlord kicked them out. I stirred my coffee slowly. I see. They're staying with us for now, she added. It's just temporary. Of course, I said. Though I knew temporary in my family usually meant indefinitely. By the next week, the updates started coming whether I asked for them or not. Mom sounded more and more tired each time. She doesn't help around the house, complains about the food, won't even do her own laundry. I said nothing. She made your father move the furniture yesterday, Mom continued, voice shaking with exhaustion. He hurt his back again. And when I asked her to stop, she told me I should be grateful to have her there. I exhaled into the phone. You chose to open the door, Mom. Now you're living with what you let in. Anna, please don't be cruel. I'm not, I said quietly. just honest. The calls slowed after that. 4 months went by. Work was steady, calm. My patients smiled again. I did too. I'd saved more money in that short time than I had in the last 2 years. My weekends belonged to me. Sometimes I'd drive to the lake house, sit by the water with a book and a blanket, listening to the birds and the wind. The same house that once felt tainted by their noise now breathed again. Then one chilly afternoon, my parents asked to meet for coffee. I walked into the cafe expecting another guilt trip. Instead, they both looked older, smaller somehow. "Liam and Vanessa are getting divorced," Mom said flatly. "She's been awful to him, said things you wouldn't believe." Dad nodded. She called him useless, wrote online that she wasted her life on him. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. I dreamed of this kind of justice, but standing in front of it, it didn't feel triumphant. It felt heavy, inevitable. "I'm sorry," I said softly. "For him." Mom looked at me with wet eyes. "You were right, Anna, about everything. We should have listened." I didn't gloat. I didn't have to. Weeks later, I heard the rest through her updates. The divorce finalized. Vanessa moved back with her parents. Liam found a new job, one that finally paid well. It turned out that once he lost his cushion, he learned to swim. When he called me for the first time since it all happened, his voice was hesitant. "I just wanted to say thanks," he said, "for stopping what you were doing. I didn't get it before, but I do now." I felt my throat tighten. "I'm glad, Liam. I'm sorry," he added, "for not standing up for you that night. For all of it." I smiled, tears stinging, but not falling. "We're okay." And we were. Slowly, the fractures in our family began to mend, not perfectly, but honestly. The lake thawed with spring. The trees budded again, soft green against the blue water. One Sunday, I invited my parents and Liam to dinner. No outsiders this time. We ate, laughed awkwardly, and when they left, my mom hugged me longer than she had in years. Later, I stood on the porch watching the sun dip below the lake. For the first time, I didn't see loss in what had happened. I saw balance. The noise was gone, replaced by stillness, and I realized I finally had peace. Spring melted fully into summer, and the lake turned to glass again. The air smelled of pine and new beginnings. I drove up to the cabin one evening after work, no traffic, no phone calls waiting, just the sound of gravel under my tires. Inside, everything was clean and quiet. The same couch where strangers once sat was now covered with a soft blanket and a half-read novel. I lit a single candle on the counter and opened the windows. The air moved through the house like forgiveness. I walked down to the dock with a glass of wine, the same spot where months ago I'd stood trembling with anger. The water reflected the sky, pink fading to gold, and I thought about how strange peace feels when you've lived too long in chaos. Liam was doing well now. My parents had stopped apologizing in words and started showing it in actions. Sunday dinners, gentle questions, no more guilt. Even Vanessa had disappeared from our story. Her name no longer sharpened my mind. For a long time, I believed silence meant weakness, that letting people walk away or walking away myself was surrender. But I've learned silence can also be strength. It can be the sound of boundaries locking into place. The house they once invaded isn't a reminder of humiliation anymore. It's proof that I took my life back without screaming, without revenge, headlines, just quiet decisions one after another until everything cruel collapsed on its own. I watched the first stars flicker over the water and smiled. Sometimes the best revenge is peace. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you love to protect your peace? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your story.
He told me I was emotionally draining while I was paying for his therapy. That's how the story ends, or maybe that's where it truly begins. My name is Bonnie Griffith. I'm 29 years old, and for the longest time, I thought love meant rescuing someone from their own darkness. When Tyler first moved into my apartment, he called it his safe place. He'd just come out of a messy breakup, the kind that leaves bruises on your confidence. He said his ex, Melissa, had messed him up emotionally. I believed him. Maybe I wanted to believe him because if he was broken, then I could be the one to fix him. At first, I didn't question the late-night silences or the sudden storms of tears. I just held him when he needed to be held, gave him space when he didn't. I made myself small so he could breathe. When he said therapy was too expensive, I told him not to worry. I'd cover it. It wasn't cheap, but I told myself love was supposed to be an investment. Every Wednesday, I drove him to his sessions and waited in the car, scrolling aimlessly while he found himself. Afterwards, we'd go for dinner. I'd listen while he talked about his progress, how hard he was trying. I'd smile proud of him. He used to text me things like, "You're my calm," or "I don't know what I'd do without you." Those little messages were fuel for my hope, proof that my patience meant something. But over time, his gratitude turned into expectation. Expectation turned into irritation, and irritation into contempt. It started subtly. If I asked about therapy, he'd sigh like I was nagging. If I told him I missed him, he'd laugh it off, saying, "You're too intense sometimes, Bonnie." One night over dinner, I asked gently, "Do you think therapy's helping?" He rolled his eyes. "You don't have to make everything about feelings you know. Can't we just exist for once?" I went quiet. He reached for his wine like nothing had happened, and I forced a smile. I told myself he was tired, that it wasn't about me. But something inside me folded in half that night. A week later, he brought up Melissa again. We were chopping vegetables, casual, almost playful, when he said Melissa and I used to cook together. It was easy. Nothing was ever so heavy. I froze mid-chop. "Heavy," I repeated. He shrugged, stirring the sauce. "Yeah, you just overthink everything. You're emotionally draining sometimes. I miss when things were easy." The words felt like glass shattering in my chest. I wanted to tell him about the nights I stayed awake holding him through panic attacks, about how I rearranged my work schedule to drive him to therapy, about the thousands I'd spent just so he could heal, but I didn't say any of it. I just stared at the cutting board. The knife gleamed under the kitchen light, reflecting my face, tired, pale, hollowed by someone else's weight. "I didn't know caring could be exhausting," I said quietly. He laughed, light dismissive. "That's exactly what I mean. Everything turns into an emotional moment with you." Then he went back to stirring. That sound, the wooden spoon scraping the pot, echoed louder than any argument we could have had. After that, the air in the apartment changed. His work nights got later. He kept his phone face down. The hugs became colder, mechanical. Once I heard him whispering on the balcony, his tone soft, intimate. When he walked back in, startled to see me awake, I asked, "Who was that?" He blinked. "A friend. Work stuff. You don't need to know everything, Bonnie." I smiled politely and said nothing, but his words etched themselves into my memory. You don't need to know everything. That's how people talk when they're hiding something. The next morning, he kissed my cheek like nothing had happened, and I pretended to believe him. But inside, something quiet and dangerous began to shift. The woman who once measured her worth in how well she could love a broken man, Faye, was starting to wonder what she'd lose if she stopped. After that night, the silence between us became its own language. He'd come home late, shoes dragging, smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't his. When I asked where he'd been, he'd sigh, the kind of sigh that accused me of asking before I even said a word. "I told you," he'd mumble, loosening his tie. "Work drinks. My therapist said I should socialize more." He made his therapist sound like a shield, someone who granted him permission to do whatever he wanted. I'd nod, pretending to believe him, but my stomach always tightened when I heard the lock click at midnight. One evening, I found one of his receipts on the counter. 2 glasses of wine, 1 entree, 1 dessert. The restaurant name was scrawled at the top, the same place where we used to celebrate anniversaries. When I looked up, he was already watching me. "Why are you going through my things?" he asked. "I wasn't," I said softly. "You left it here." He took it from my hand, tore it in half, and smiled without warmth. "You really need to stop overanalyzing everything, Bonnie. It's exhausting." That word again. Exhausting. I used to think I was his anchor. Now I realized he thought I was his weight. Sometimes I'd catch him staring into space, scrolling on his phone with a faint smirk. When I walked into the room, he'd lock it instantly, as if the light of the screen would betray him. I stopped asking. I stopped confronting. I just watched. Because when love turns into suspicion, you learn that silence tells the truth faster than any confession ever will. Weeks passed like that. He'd come home late, say I'm tired, and collapse on the couch. He no longer told me about therapy or Melissa or anything at all. The man I fell in love with, the one who used to say, "You're my calm," was gone. In his place was a stranger who only spoke in half-truths and accusations. One night, he didn't come home at all. I sat on the couch till dawn, the clock ticking too loudly, my phone face up on the table. He texted at 5:37 a.m. "Stayed at a friend's, don't wait up next time, I need space." That word space used to sound like self-care. Now it sounded like rejection wrapped in therapy jargon. I tried to convince myself he was just lost the way hurt people often are. But the thing about loving someone who's broken is eventually you realize they don't want to be healed, they just want you to bleed with them. He began to twist everything I said. If I asked a question, I was insecure. If I stayed quiet, I was passive-aggressive. If I cried, I was too emotional. If I didn't, I was cold. There was no right way to love him anymore. Every word I spoke felt like stepping barefoot on glass. Then came the night that burned everything down. It was raining hard enough to drown out my thoughts. I walked past the balcony to close the sliding door and froze. His voice. Low, soft, too familiar. "No, she's asleep. Yeah, I miss you too." The words sliced through the rain like thunder. When he turned, I was standing there, arms crossed, expression calm, though my heart was roaring. "Who was that?" I asked quietly. He blinked, startled. Then his voice hardened. "Why are you eavesdropping, God, Bonnie? You're suffocating sometimes." I laughed at the kind of laugh that sounds more like breaking. "Right. Because I overheard you missing someone else." He ran a hand through his hair. "You always twist things. You hear what you want." "No," I said softly. "I'm just finally hearing you clearly." That night I didn't cry. I lay awake beside him, listening to the rhythm of his shallow sleep. His phone buzzed once, twice. He didn't stir. The next morning he kissed my forehead, like he hadn't just torn something sacred apart. And as the door closed behind him, I stared at the empty space he left, realizing that love shouldn't feel like surviving someone's moods. He said I was emotionally draining, but maybe he was right, just not in the way he thought, because loving him had drained everything from me. The day everything snapped was a Thursday. I remember because Thursdays were therapy days. He'd left early wearing that same navy shirt I'd ironed for him the night before, the one he always wore when he wanted to look put together. He didn't kiss me goodbye, just said, "Don't wait up." By then, I'd stopped asking where he was going after his sessions. You learn eventually that people who want to be caught will leave a trail. People who don't make sure you look crazy for following it. That afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was Lena, a mutual friend. She sent a message that started with, "Hey, are you and Tyler okay?" My stomach dropped. Before I could type back, a photo followed. Tyler, sitting across from Melissa at a cafe, leaning in close, smiling in that effortless way I hadn't seen in months. Her hand rested on his arm, his phone face down on the table. The timestamp read 2:47 p.m., the same time he was supposedly in therapy. I stared at the picture for a long time, waiting for the ache to rise, for tears, for rage. But what came instead was silence, cold and strangely liberating. Because deep down I already knew. The light had gone out long before that photo. The picture was just proof. That evening, I drove home in the rain. Every streetlight looked like it was watching me. I walked into our apartment, still smelling of his cologne, and saw his mug on the counter, the one that said, "Progress, not perfection." I picked it up, stared at it for a moment, then placed it gently in the sink. Then I opened my laptop, canceled the automatic payments for his therapy sessions, booked a small rental 2 neighborhoods away, and began packing. Not out of anger, out of clarity. I didn't take everything. Just what I brought into the relationship, my clothes, my books, the wooden jewelry box my mom gave me. He could keep the furniture, the dishes, the safe place he once called ours. Before leaving, I stood in the kitchen one last time. The place felt hollow, stripped of laughter, of late-night whispers, of everything I once thought was love. I took a sticky note and wrote in neat blue ink, "You said I was draining. I hope this feels lighter." I set it beside his keys and walked out without looking back. He didn't notice I was gone until hours later. While I unpacked my last box in the new apartment, my phone lit up one call, then another. Then a message. "What the hell is this, Bonnie? Are you seriously ghosting me? You're being dramatic." "Melissa and I were just talking. My therapist said closure is healthy. Please call me. Don't do this." I turned the phone face down and let it buzz. For months, I had waited outside his therapy sessions, believing that healing was something we could share. But I finally understood some people don't want healing. They want an audience. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in nearly a year. No shallow breaths beside me. No anxious whispers of "don't leave." Just stillness. When I woke up, the morning light poured across the floor, clean and golden. And I realized something that terrified me at first. Peace can feel lonely at the beginning, but that's only because you've forgotten what quiet really sounds like. For the next few days, my phone was a war zone calls, voice notes, long paragraphs that swung between anger and apology. "You overreacted. You misunderstood. Melissa means nothing. Please, Bonnie, don't do this." I didn't respond to any of them. I wasn't playing a game. I was done playing his. When he realized I wasn't answering, the tone of his messages changed. You always do this, you know. You run away when things get hard. I was just trying to figure myself out. You, of all people, should understand that. That last line made me laugh. I did understand. That's why I left. 2 days later, he showed up at my new apartment. I knew he would. People like Tyler don't handle silence well. It forces them to hear their own echoes. He knocked for 5 full minutes before I opened the door. He looked furious and panicked all at once. So that's it, he snapped. You just leave? No conversation, no closure. I leaned against the doorframe, calm. You already had your closure, I said. You just wanted me to stay and watch you enjoy it. His jaw tightened. You always twist everything. I didn't cheat on you. Melissa just needed clarity. I was helping her move on. Right, I said quietly. How generous of you. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You're being cruel. You know I didn't mean to hurt you. I know, I said, meeting his eyes. You just didn't care enough not to. The silence that followed was suffocating. For the first time, I watched him struggle for words and find none. He had always been good at deflection, good at making me doubt myself. But now he was talking to someone who had already stopped listening. He took a step back, trying a different tone. Bonnie, I just need time. We can work through this. I shook my head. You need therapy, not an audience. I'm done clapping for your pain. Then I closed the door. Not dramatically, not with tears, just firmly, finally. The first week alone felt strange. Not painful exactly, just empty. I kept expecting the sound of keys in the lock, his humming in the shower, the thud of his shoes in the hallway. But all I heard was the hum of my refrigerator and the occasional buzz of my phone. I didn't answer his messages, but I read them all out of habit, more than curiosity. Each one was shorter than the last, until finally there were none. And in their place came silence. But instead of feeling hollow, that silence started to feel clean. Like breathing after years of stale air. Like walking barefoot on cool tiles after stepping out of fire. I rearranged the apartment. Bought myself a small plant I named Closure. It sat by the window, always turning toward the light. Every morning, I'd make coffee and sit on the balcony, his old spot, and watch the city wake up. At first, I expected him to show up again. They always do when they realize the leash is gone. But days turned into weeks, and he didn't. Maybe he finally found another savior. Maybe he was too proud. Maybe he was waiting for me to break first. He didn't realize that silence wasn't my weakness. It was my recovery. Because some people think you disappear when you stop talking. But sometimes that's when you finally start existing again. It had been a month since I last heard his voice. Long enough for my apartment to smell like lavender instead of regret. Long enough for me to start sleeping through the night without dreaming about him. Then one morning, as sunlight slid across the kitchen tiles, my phone buzzed. Tyler, hey, can we talk just one last time? I stared at the message. My coffee went cold before I even blinked. The silence I'd built was so peaceful that his words felt like a rock thrown into still water. I didn't reply. By evening, another message came. You don't have to be so cold. You know I'm not a bad person. I set my phone down and smiled faintly. Of course he wasn't a bad person. He was just a selfish one, and those are often harder to spot. 3 days later, I got a call from Lena. Bonnie, you might want to sit down for this. I laughed softly. What did he do now? Apparently, she said, lowering her voice, Melissa dumped him. She said he was manipulative, that he used his healing talk to guilt trip her. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. Lena hesitated. He told people you never supported him, that you abandoned him during his lowest point. I took a slow sip of coffee. Let him. People like Tyler don't tell lies, they tell versions of the truth that make them the hero. Later that night, curiosity got the better of me. I checked his Instagram. He'd deleted all our photos, replaced them with filtered selfies and long captions about self-growth and being misunderstood by people who couldn't handle his depth. In one post, he wrote, "When you love someone too much, they mistake it for control." I actually laughed out loud. The irony was almost poetic. Scrolling through his feed, I realized something important. He hadn't changed. He'd just rebranded. He was still the same man, just with better hashtags. Meanwhile, my life had quietly begun to bloom again. I joined a pottery class, signed up for yoga. I even started painting again, something I hadn't done since before him. Each brushstroke felt like reclaiming a piece of myself he'd once drained away. Sometimes while washing paint from my hands, I'd wonder if he thought of me, if he ever missed the version of himself that I'd built for him. But then I'd remember he didn't miss me. He missed the mirror. I'd been the one that made him look better than he was. A few weeks later, Lena texted again. Tyler's been ranting online about toxic women who drain men emotionally. I smirked. Guess the title's been recycled. He also lost a few clients from his freelance work, she added. Apparently, word got around about him flirting with coworkers. Karma, it seemed, had started her work quietly. Not dramatic, just steady. Little cracks forming in the mirror he used to adore himself in. One night, as I stood on my balcony with a glass of wine watching the city lights, my phone buzzed again. Tyler. I miss who we were. Not the fighting, just us. I know I messed up. I read it once, then I deleted it. Because when you finally made peace, you don't answer ghosts who are still haunting their own reflection. He once told me I was emotionally draining, but now he was the one pouring into a void. And for the first time in years, I realized his silence no longer frightened me. It freed me. 2 months of peace went by. No messages, no calls, no reminders that once upon a time I had built my entire life around a man who called me too much. Then one Sunday afternoon, someone knocked on my door. Softly, almost guiltily. I already knew who it was. When I opened it, there stood Tyler, wearing a hoodie unshaven. Eyes red, like he hadn't slept in days. The man who once obsessed over appearing composed now looked like a ghost wearing regret. "Can I come in?" he asked. I leaned against the doorframe. "Why?" His lips trembled. I need to explain. I sighed quietly. "You already did. I just finally listened." That answer seemed to knock the air out of him. He stared at the floor, his voice shrinking. "I made a mistake, Bonnie. Melissa, she wasn't what I thought she was. I thought I needed excitement, but what I really needed was stability. You. I just needed a backup plan," I finished for him. He looked up sharply. "That's not fair." "Neither was blaming me for your pain while I was paying to fix it," I said evenly. For a long moment, he said nothing. The silence stretched heavy and brittle. I could almost hear the excuses forming behind his eyes, the half-apologies he'd rehearsed on his way here. Then his voice cracked. "I really did love you, you know." I didn't flinch. "You loved being loved by me." "That's not the same thing." He looked like he wanted to argue, but there was nothing left to fight for. He took a hesitant step closer. "Please, just give me another chance. I've changed. My therapist helped me see what I did wrong." I couldn't help it. I almost laughed. The same therapist I was paying for. That broke whatever composure he had left. His shoulders slumped and his voice turned sharp. "God, you're so cruel now. You used to care." "I did," I said softly. "That's the problem. I cared enough for both of us." He stared at me jaw tight. "You're different." "I'm calm," I said. "You mistook that for cold." For a moment, he just stood there, eyes darting around the apartment. My plants, my paintings, the quiet light through the curtains. All the things that had nothing to do with him. Finally, he whispered, "So that's it. After everything, you're just done." I nodded. "You told me once that love shouldn't feel like an obligation." "You were right. I'm just taking your advice." He blinked speechless. I opened the door wider, not for him to enter, but for him to leave. "You should go, Tyler." He hesitated. "I don't have anywhere to be." "That's not my problem anymore." He looked at me like I'd spoken a language he couldn't understand. The same man who once held my tears in his hands now stood there, unable to even look me in the eye. He lingered for another second, waiting for softness that wasn't coming. Then he turned, walked out into the hallway, and disappeared down the stairs. When I closed the door, the quiet returned, instantly. Gentle, unbothered, familiar. I stood there for a long time, listening to the silence that used to feel lonely, but now felt like freedom. For the first time, I didn't replay what I could have said differently. I didn't ache for closure or justice or revenge. He'd come seeking redemption, but what he really wanted was permission to keep his conscience clean. I wasn't giving him that. Later that night, I lit a candle on the kitchen counter, the same spot where his old coffee mug used to sit. The flame flickered softly steady and unafraid. It hit me. Then, closure isn't always about forgiveness. Sometimes it's just about letting the door close and not opening it again, no matter how gently they knock. 3 months passed. By then, Tyler's name had turned into nothing more than background noise, like an old song you don't hate but can't bear to replay. Life had rhythm again. Mornings began with coffee and sunlight, not apologies and tension. I'd gotten a promotion at work, started teaching weekend art classes, and met people who didn't need saving to feel seen. Peace was strange at first. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, almost shy, like something fragile learning to trust me again. One Friday evening, Lena called. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "Tyler's been showing up at my yoga studio." I smiled. He's meditating now, crying mostly. Apparently, Melissa cheated on him with one of his coworkers. I didn't even react. Of course she did. Lena sighed. He's been telling everyone that you broke him first, and that's why he can't trust anyone. That made me laugh, not out of cruelty, but out of recognition. Tyler hadn't changed. He'd just found a new audience for the same story. He can tell it however he wants, I said. I'm no longer a character in it. A week later, I got an invitation to a mutual friend's engagement party, Kevin's. Lena called again, hesitant. Just so you know, Tyler's going too. I paused for a moment, then smiled. Good. I'm not the one who should be hiding. The party was on a rooftop downtown. Warm lights, music, laughter. When I arrived, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: ease. No eyes on me, no whispers, no tension. Just belonging. Halfway through the night, I saw him. Tyler. He stood near the bar, wearing a white shirt, trying too hard to look unbothered. When his eyes met mine, he froze for a moment, then forced a smile and walked over. Wow, he said softly. You look good. Thanks, I replied calmly. He glanced around, noticing people watching. Can we talk somewhere private? I gestured to the balcony. Sure. Outside, the city glowed beneath us. He leaned against the railing, trying to find his composure. I know you probably don't want to hear from me again, he began, voice trembling. But I've been doing a lot of work on myself. Therapy, reflection. I realize now how badly I treated you. I nodded. Okay. He blinked, taken aback. That's it, just okay. What else do you want me to say? I just thought, maybe we could start over, even as friends. I don't expect everything to go back to how it was, but maybe someday. Someday isn't coming, I said gently. I'm glad you're working on yourself, but that doesn't mean I owe you a place in my peace. His face fell. You really mean that? Yes, I said, steady. Because I finally understand something. Peace isn't something you find in another person. It's what's left when you stop letting the wrong ones take it. He stared at me, stunned. Bonnie, I made one mistake, and you won't forgive me. It wasn't one mistake, I said quietly. It was years of small ones. Lies, guilt, manipulation. You just didn't notice them piling up because I kept cleaning up after them. He swallowed hard, eyes wet. You sound so different now. I am, I said simply. You taught me what I'll never accept again. He whispered, You really don't care anymore, do you? I smiled faintly. I wish you peace, Tyler. But no, I don't. He turned, walked back inside, trying to keep his pride intact. I stayed there on the balcony, watching the city lights shimmer below each one, a quiet promise that life goes on. Later that night, my phone buzzed with one final message from him. You'll miss me one day. People like me don't come twice. I stared at it for a moment, then deleted the entire thread. He was right about one thing: people like him don't come twice, because once you learn to recognize them, you never let them in again. That night before bed, I lit another candle on my kitchen counter, the same spot where his note used to sit. The flame flickered softly, steady, and gold, filling the room with quiet warmth. And for the first time in years, I whispered to myself, not out of anger or grief, but simple truth. Peace isn't the absence of pain. It's the reward for walking away from it. I blew out the candle. The room went dark, but I didn't feel alone. I felt free. When people say love makes you blind, they never tell you how long it takes before your sight comes back. My name is Alice Decker. I'm 26, a systems analyst for a logistics firm, and I used to think love was about proving you're good enough, until I met his mother. Sam and I had been together for almost 2 years. He was 24, easygoing, full of charm and half-finished dreams. He still lived with his mother, Evelyn Thompson, in her pristine 2-story house, where the carpet smelled like lavender and quiet judgment. Evelyn was the kind of woman who smiled while she measured you. She didn't ask questions, she assessed. From the moment she shook my hand, she seemed to know exactly what kind of woman I was. The kind that works too hard, saves receipts, and drives a 6-year-old sedan instead of something German and shiny. I still remember the first dinner I had at their house. The roast beef was perfect, the conversation wasn't. So Alice Evelyn began cutting her meat with surgical precision. Sam tells me you work with computer systems analysis, I said politely. Mostly workflow optimization for, Very practical, she interrupted, smiling thinly. It's nice to have a safe job. Some people don't like taking risks. Sam laughed awkwardly. I smiled too, though my stomach sank. I told myself she didn't mean it the way it sounded. But Evelyn's words always had 2 meanings, the polite one for the table and the knife hidden beneath. After dinner, she poured me tea and said, You're lovely, dear. So grounded. Sam could use a little grounding. He's always dreaming too big. I wanted to thank her. Instead, I caught the faintest curve of her lips, that little glint of disapproval that said she didn't mean it as a compliment. From then on, dinners became weekly auditions. I brought flowers. I laughed at her jokes. I complimented her recipes. It didn't matter. I was never enough too practical, too plain, too comfortable. Vanessa Lee's daughter just bought a condo in the city Evelyn would mention casually over dessert. She's in finance now, doing wonderfully. You remember her, Sam? She used to volunteer with your charity club? He nodded. Yeah, Vanessa's great. Evelyn's eyes flicked toward me. Ambitious girl. I love her energy. I felt it then, the first crack small, but deep. That night I told Sam, your mom doesn't like me. He sighed. She's just traditional. She'll come around. But I wasn't sure. There was something about the way Evelyn looked at me, as if she was already planning my replacement. Weeks passed. Her comparisons grew sharper. Vanessa just got promoted again, she'd say, pretending to scroll her phone. And look at this picture, she looks radiant. Don't you think so, Sam? He'd nod absently, not noticing how my hands tightened around my glass. Still, I stayed. Because I loved him. Because I believed love could earn approval. Because I thought kindness was currency. One Sunday, Evelyn called while we were cooking breakfast. Her voice was syrupy sweet. Alice, dear, I'd love to have you both over for dinner this Friday. Oh, and Vanessa will be joining us. She's in town for the weekend. My heart skipped. Oh, I said. That's nice. She's practically family, Evelyn said. I think you'll really like her. I hung up slowly, the smell of burnt toast filling the silence. Sam tried to brush it off. She's probably just being polite, but something in his tone told me he wanted to believe that as much as I did. Friday arrived too soon. When Vanessa walked through the door, the air shifted. She was the kind of woman who walked like she owned every room, glossed hair, confident posture, expensive perfume. Evelyn greeted her with a hug that lasted too long, her voice high and delighted. Vanessa. Darling, it's been ages. The dinner that followed could have been mistaken for an audition. Vanessa talked about her new position in a finance firm, her trip to Miami, her upcoming investment project. Evelyn was enchanted. Sam laughed a little too often. I sat there smiling, shrinking. Every compliment for Vanessa was an unspoken criticism of me. When I tried to join in, Evelyn cut across with practiced ease. Alice, you wouldn't believe the risks Vanessa's taking with her career. It's so inspiring. I forced a smile. Yes, very brave. She's got such drive, Evelyn added, glancing my way. Don't you think, Sam? He nodded, not noticing the tension tightening around my chest. By dessert, I'd memorized Vanessa's resume. Evelyn leaned in, chin resting on her hand. Sam, dear you. And Vanessa should exchange numbers. Maybe she could teach you a thing or two about investing. My fork froze. Mom. Sam said, laughing awkwardly. Alice is right here. Oh, I didn't mean anything by it, Evelyn said smoothly. Just friendly networking. But her eyes told a different story. Later that night, I stood in the bathroom staring at my reflection. My mascara had smudged slightly. My lipstick had faded. I looked tired. Not unpretty, just ordinary. Evelyn would call that practical. Vanessa would call it uninspired. When Sam came in, I asked softly, Did you notice how your mom kept comparing me to her? He rubbed his neck. You're overthinking it. Am I? She just admires ambition. I turned to face him. And you don't think I have any? He hesitated too long before saying, Not like Vanessa. That silence after his words, that was the sound of something breaking quietly inside me. I smiled instead. I hope she teaches you how to invest then. He frowned. Don't be like that. Like what, jealous? I laughed once, a sharp sound that didn't feel like mine. You'll know when I'm jealous, Sam. Right now I'm just tired. When I got home that night, I opened my phone and scrolled through Vanessa's public Instagram. There they were, pictures from dinner, already posted. Evelyn tagged Sam, laughing in the corner of the frame. The caption read, Great dinner with inspiring people. In the middle of that photo, I saw it the way Vanessa leaned slightly toward Sam, and the way Evelyn's proud smile sealed the frame like approval. I didn't comment. I didn't like it. I just stared at it until my reflection dimmed on the screen, thinking how quiet betrayal can look when it's dressed like ambition. That night I couldn't sleep. The words kept echoing: practical, safe, comfortable. All the things I used to believe were good. I didn't know it then, but that dinner was the last night I'd still believe I was part of that family. After that, I'd stop trying to fit into their world and start learning how to rebuild mine. The next Friday, I almost canceled. Evelyn's voice over the phone had been too cheerful, the kind that promised discomfort wrapped in civility. But Sam had begged me, "It'll mean a lot if you come. Mom's trying. Trying." That word again. I wore a navy dress, simple but elegant. Not too flashy, not too plain. I spent 20 minutes choosing earrings and another 20, convincing myself I didn't care what Evelyn thought. By the time we pulled into her driveway, I'd already rehearsed my smile 100 times. Evelyn greeted us at the door, perfume-heavy diamonds catching the hallway light. "Oh, Alice, you look nice," she said. Her eyes swept from my shoes to my hair. "That color is practical." "Thank you," I said, swallowing the rest of the sentence I wanted to add. Vanessa arrived moments later, bringing the scent of something expensive and floral. She wore white, an intentional kind of purity. Her heels clicked confidently against the marble floor. Evelyn's face lit up like a chandelier. "Vanessa, darling, you remember Sam, of course." "Of course," she said, her smile dazzling. "And you must be Alice." She extended her hand like a queen greeting a courtier. "I've heard so much about you. Hopefully good things," I said. Her eyes sparkled. "Oh, the best." At dinner, Evelyn positioned the seating as if she were casting a play. Vanessa sat directly beside Sam. I was across from them, in perfect view of their laughter. The table was set with silverware so polished I could see my reflection warped and thin. Conversation flowed easily between the three of them. Stocks travel future opportunities. Every word felt like a subtle reminder of the world I didn't belong to. When I tried to contribute, Evelyn would nod politely, then redirect. "That's nice, dear. Anyway, Vanessa, tell us more about that investment project you mentioned." Sam leaned forward, genuinely intrigued. I watched him laugh in a way I hadn't seen in weeks, open, easy, fascinated. He looked alive. And for the first time, I realized he didn't look at me that way anymore. Halfway through dessert, Vanessa laughed at something Sam said, touching his arm lightly. He didn't pull away. Evelyn noticed, of course. She didn't stop it. She refilled Vanessa's glass and said, "You two make such a dynamic pair, so much energy in the room." I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood. My spoon clinked against the plate, louder than I meant it to. When the evening finally ended, I helped gather dishes while Evelyn hummed. "She's impressive, isn't she?" she said, rinsing a plate. "Vanessa? So independent, so ambitious. Reminds me of myself at her age." I smiled thinly. "I can see that." She turned water dripping from her hands. "Alice, dear Sam has such potential. He just needs someone who helps him dream bigger." "Are you saying I don't? I'm saying he deserves a partner who matches his drive." "You're steady, which is lovely. But steady doesn't build empires." The words landed like stones in my stomach. When I came back into the living room, Vanessa was showing Sam pictures of her condo renovation on her phone. Evelyn stood behind them, smiling like a proud matchmaker. That was the moment I knew something irreversible had started. The drive home was silent for the first 10 minutes. Finally, I said, "So Vanessa's impressive." Sam chuckled nervously. "Yeah, she's doing well. Your mom couldn't stop singing her praises. She just likes successful people. You know how she is. Does she?" I looked out the window. "Or does she just like successful women near you?" He sighed. "Come on, Alice, don't start." "I'm not starting anything. I'm asking if you noticed how she treats me. She's trying to help. She just wants me to have a good future. And I don't fit into that picture, right?" "Don't twist my words. I don't have to." The red light cast his face in a harsh glow. He turned to me, jaw tight. "You're always so defensive when it comes to her. Because she's constantly undermining me, Sam. You just don't see it. She's not the enemy, Alice. You take everything personally. Maybe because it is personal when your mother invites another woman to dinner and calls her ambitious in front of me." He didn't respond. The light turned green. The silence stretched. When we finally parked outside my apartment, I reached for the door handle. "Alice, wait," he said. "Vanessa's not competition." I laughed softly. "Then why does it feel like I'm losing a game I didn't agree to play?" That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. My phone buzzed beside me. Sam's message. "I love you. Don't let my mom get to you." I stared at the words, wondering which part hurt more, the love that sounded like pity or the fact that he didn't say anything about Vanessa. I scrolled through social media, half out of masochism, half curiosity. There it was again, Vanessa's newest post. A group photo from dinner Evelyn tagged. Caption: "Some dinners remind you how much potential is in the room." Sam had liked it. My thumb hovered over the screen. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I whispered into the darkness, "You're not losing him, Alice. He's giving himself away." Days passed. Sam started canceling plans. Work's busy, he'd text. Or Vanessa's introducing me to a contact. It could help my career. The messages came with less warmth, fewer emojis. "No, I miss you." I found myself checking my phone less, then checking it more, then hating that I cared at all. At work, my coworkers noticed the change. "You okay?" one asked gently. "I'm fine," I lied. But my reflection in the monitor looked pale, brittle, and older than 26. The next Sunday, Evelyn called again. "Alice, dear, I'm hosting dinner next weekend. Vanessa will be there again. It would be nice if you came." I hesitated. "I don't think she's bringing a friend in real estate," Evelyn cut in. "You could learn a lot from her." The phone line buzzed with her condescension. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. "You're right, Evelyn. I could learn a lot from this entire experience." She paused, confused. "What do you mean, dear?" "I mean I won't be coming. Have a lovely evening." And before she could respond, I hung up. That night, Sam texted Mom, "Says you're being distant." Did something happen? I typed, deleted, retyped, and finally sent, just realizing some dinners aren't worth attending. He didn't reply. Weeks later, a new photo appeared on my feed, Vanessa and Sam side by side at some rooftop bar, his arm around her waist. Evelyn's comment below, "So proud of you both, ambition looks good on you." For a long time, I just stared at the picture. Then calmly, I deleted his number. It felt like a small death and the first breath of freedom. They say the end of a relationship happens long before the breakup. You feel it first in the silence between messages, the absence of laughter, the way someone's eyes stop meeting yours. For me, it started the moment ambitious became a compliment and comfortable became an insult. A month after that dinner, Sam and I still hadn't officially broken up, but I could feel the gap between us widening with every conversation. He started talking about Vanessa the way people talk about a podcast they can't stop listening to. "She's helping me think bigger," he'd say. "She's really inspiring." And every time I'd smile like I wasn't bleeding inside. One night I brought over Thai takeout, the kind we used to share during movie marathons, but he barely looked up from his laptop. "She's got me thinking about starting my own business," he said. "Vanessa?" I asked, setting down the food. "Yeah. She says comfort zones are cages. You know, you get too used to stability, and suddenly you stop dreaming." "Comfort zones," I repeated slowly. "That's what she calls being happy." He frowned. "Don't twist it, Jules. She's just ambitious," I finished for him. He sighed. "You always get defensive when I talk about her. I get defensive when the woman your mother adores suddenly becomes your new career coach." He shook his head. "You just don't get it." No, I did get it. I just didn't want to admit what it meant. We ate in silence, the air thick with unspoken things. When he kissed me goodnight that evening, his lips felt like a habit, not affection. Evelyn's birthday came 2 weeks later. Against my better judgment, I went. Maybe I wanted to prove I still belonged. Maybe I just wanted closure. The restaurant was upscale, white tablecloths, waiters in black vests, champagne flutes already waiting at each seat. Vanessa was there. Of course she was. She looked radiant in red, the color of victory. Evelyn beamed when she saw her. "Oh, I'm so glad you could make it, dear." Then to me, "Alice, you're here too. How nice." "Happy birthday," I said, handing her a small box, handmade candles I'd spent hours picking out. She smiled without warmth, so thoughtful. Her eyes shifted to Vanessa's gift bag, glossy and gold. "Oh, you shouldn't have," she exclaimed, genuine delight this time. The seating arrangement was no accident. Sam beside Vanessa, me at the far end near Evelyn's cousin, who talked endlessly about her cat's digestive issues. From my seat, I watched Evelyn laugh too loudly at Vanessa's jokes, Sam leaning close to whisper something in her ear, the faint brush of her hand on his sleeve. It was all polite, subtle, like a play, for people too proud to admit their parts. At one point, Evelyn stood to toast, to the people who inspire us to be better, to growth ambition and the courage to go after what we truly deserve. Everyone clinked glasses. I took a slow sip, pretending the champagne didn't burn going down. After dinner, Sam offered to drive me home. The car ride was thick with silence until I said quietly, "That was humiliating." He frowned. "What was your mom treating me like an afterthought while she fawns over Vanessa?" "You're overreacting. Am I?" She literally toasted to ambition and courage while looking directly at her. "She wasn't talking about you. That's exactly my point." He exhaled sharply. "You always make everything about what my mom says. Because what she says affects you, and then it affects us." He gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Maybe you just don't understand what ambition looks like." I laughed bitterly. "So now I'm unambitious because I don't worship Vanessa's career path." "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." The streetlight flickered through the windshield, cutting his face into halves, one guilty, one cold. Then he said the sentence that split my heart in two. "Maybe I need someone who challenges me." I turned toward him slowly. "You mean someone your mother approves of?" He didn't answer. I stared out the window, fighting back the tears that blurred the city lights. When he finally parked outside my building, I said softly, "You already had someone who challenged you, Sam. You just couldn't handle that she did it quietly." I got out before he could reply. He didn't follow. 2 days later, he texted, "Maybe we should take a break. I need to figure out who I am and what I want." I stared at the message until my screen dimmed. "Figure out who you are," I thought. "You already did. You're your mother's son." I didn't reply that night, or the next. When I finally did, I simply wrote, "Take all the time you need." Then I set my phone face down and deleted our photos. Weeks blurred together. He stopped calling. I stopped hoping. I threw myself into work, into long walks home, into podcasts about self-worth and boundaries that I barely listened to. Some nights I'd see his car pass my street and wonder if he even thought of me anymore. Other nights I'd scroll through Vanessa's posts until I hated myself for caring. Then one afternoon my coworker Tia glanced over my shoulder and said softly, "You've seen this right," on her phone. Vanessa and Sam again. Smiling, holding champagne. Caption, "When ambition meets destiny, #power couple." My heart didn't shatter this time. It just went quiet, like a light that knew it wasn't needed anymore. That night, I stood by my window, city lights flickering like distant promises. Maybe Evelyn was right. Maybe I wasn't ambitious enough for their world. But ambition without empathy, what did that build except emptiness? I whispered it aloud to no one but the night comfort isn't a crime. And for the first time, I almost believed it. 6 months. That's how long it took for silence to stop hurting. Not because I stopped loving him, but because the version of him I loved didn't exist anymore. By then, I'd built a rhythm again, work gym dinner for one quiet nights, with no one's approval to earn. It wasn't glamorous, but it was peaceful. And after everything, peace felt like luxury. Then one morning, while scrolling through my feed during coffee, I saw them. Sam and Vanessa. Matching designer outfits, champagne glasses in hand. Caption, "Building our empire together. #power couple. #ambition. Wins." Evelyn's comment sat proudly underneath. "So proud of you both. Love you, my darlings." I stared at that photo until my coffee went cold. Not out of jealousy, that emotion had burned out months ago, but something quieter, heavier. Pity maybe, or recognition. Because in that picture, their smiles didn't reach their eyes. A few weeks later, I ran into an old mutual friend, Emma, at a cafe near my office. We hadn't spoken since the breakup, not out of hostility, just the quiet division that happens when sides are chosen. She hesitated before speaking. "Alice, can I tell you something?" I smiled faintly. "If it's about Sam, probably not." She looked down, fidgeting with her cup. "I think something's wrong. With him. With them." I froze. "What do you mean?" Emma glanced around, lowered her voice. "I saw them at Megan's birthday last weekend. Vanessa wouldn't let Sam out of her sight. He barely talked to anyone. She kept interrupting him, correcting what he said. I forced a small laugh. Maybe that's just her personality. "No," she said, her tone firm now. "He looked scared, Alice. I know that sounds dramatic, but something's off." I wanted to tell her to stop, to leave me out of it. But part of me, the stupid, compassionate part, still cared. Later that night, I couldn't stop replaying what Emma said. Sam scared the man who once accused me of being too comfortable. The irony would have been funny if it didn't feel so bitter. I poured a glass of wine and scrolled through Vanessa's feed again. Gone were the constant selfies, the couple photos, the hashtags about ambition. Her last post was over a month old, a close-up of her hand holding a glass of wine. Caption: sometimes strength means staying silent. The comments were flooded with heart emojis and vague affirmations. Something in me twisted. I closed the app. I told myself it wasn't my problem. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a message from Evelyn. Just her name on my screen made my chest tighten. Against better judgment, I opened it. Evelyn Alice, I know you don't owe me anything, but could we talk? It's about Sam. I stared at it for a long time before replying. I don't think that's a good idea. She called anyway. I didn't answer. Then she left a voicemail. Her voice, once polished and superior, sounded small. Alice, I was wrong about you, about everything. Please, he's not okay. That night I dreamt of the old Sam, the one who'd bring me coffee just the way I liked it, the one who called me his calm in the storm. And I woke up angry that even after everything, his ghost still had space in my mind. By morning I decided to ignore it, until Emma called. Alice, she said, breathless, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing telling you this, but I think Vanessa's hurting him. My stomach dropped. Hurting him how? He showed up at my place yesterday. He had bruises on his arm. He said he fell, but... Finger marks, I whispered. Yes. She exhaled shakily. I think he's trapped Alice. Vanessa's controlling everything. His money, his phone, even his friends. He's cut off from everyone. For a long moment I couldn't speak. Then I said quietly, he chose her. I know, Emma replied, but I thought you'd want to know. That night I sat in bed, phone in hand, staring at our old messages. The last thing I'd ever sent him was, take all the time you need. And he had. Time to realize the difference between ambition and abuse, between control and connection. I typed out a dozen messages. Are you okay? Do you need help? I heard what's happening, but I didn't send any of them. Because if I reached out, it wouldn't be about helping him. It would be about proving something to myself. And I was done performing for people who only remembered me when their lives fell apart. A week later, I saw a message request on my screen. From Sam. Hey, how are you? I froze. 6 months of silence, and suddenly that. I waited an hour before replying. I'm fine. Hope you're okay. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Can we talk sometime? My hands trembled. About what? About us. About everything. I made a mistake, Alice. Please, just coffee. I stared at that message until my reflection blurred in the screen. Part of me wanted to see him to understand what had happened. But another part, the wiser, calmer part, knew exactly what this was. I typed one final message. I don't think that's a good idea, Sam. And then I locked my phone, turned off the lights, and whispered to the darkness. Some people only remember your worth when theirs disappears. But that was just the beginning. Because once you tell a ghost to stay gone, it always finds a way to knock again. It started with small things, like on one of my posts, a view on my LinkedIn profile, a friend casually mentioning, hey, I think Sam's been asking about you. At first I ignored it, but curiosity is cruel. It doesn't knock, it whispers. Then one Tuesday night, my phone buzzed again. Sam. Can we talk? I stared at the message, heart steady but cold. Me. About what? Sam. I made a huge mistake. Please. Just coffee. I didn't respond that night. I didn't sleep much either. By morning, 3 more messages waited. I know I hurt you. You didn't deserve that. Vanessa isn't who I thought she was. I read them all, then deleted the thread. But guilt has a way of clawing its way back into your life, even when it's not yours. 2 days later, my phone rang. Unknown number. When I picked up, a voice I hadn't heard in almost a year said my name like it was a confession. Alice, it's Evelyn. I froze. How did you get my number? Emma gave it to me. Please don't hang up. What do you want? Her voice cracked, not the polished tone I remembered, but the sound of a woman stripped of her certainty. It's Sam. He's in trouble. The words hit me harder than I expected. I didn't speak. I just listened as she rushed on. He's not the same. Vanessa isolated him from me, from everyone. She controls his accounts, his phone. He barely eats. She yells, Alice. I've heard her. I swallowed. Then call the police. Or a counselor. You're his mother. I tried. He won't listen to me. He trusts you. Please, he needs someone he believes in. I almost laughed. Believes in Evelyn, he left me for her. Her voice wavered. I know. And I pushed him. I told him Vanessa was better for him. I was wrong. I was so wrong. For a long moment, all I heard was her sobbing quietly. The sound should have satisfied me some vindication after the humiliation she'd made me endure, but instead I felt nothing. Just a hollow ache. Evelyn, I said finally, I'm sorry this is happening, but it's not my place anymore. Alice, please, don't let pride. This isn't pride, I interrupted softly. It's peace. And I ended the call. That night I couldn't stop replaying her words. He trusts you. Did he? Or did Evelyn just want me to clean up the mess she created? I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by the window, watching the rain streak across the glass. It reminded me of that last night with Sam when he told me he needed someone more ambitious. Back then I'd cried. Now I just exhaled. I whispered to myself, you can care without going back. But part of me wondered if that was true. By the weekend, the messages returned, this time longer, desperate. Sam, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I just need you to know I see it now. I was blind. Vanessa isn't ambitious. She's controlling. She's violent. She's destroyed everything. Then a voice note. I didn't want to play it, but I did. His voice was shaky, tired, small. Jules, I messed up. I thought she was what I wanted. Excitement drive something different, but she's cruel. You were steady, safe. I thought that meant boring, but it meant love. I didn't see it until it was gone. I sat there, phone against my chest, and for a split second I almost pitied him. Almost. Days passed. More messages followed, some apologetic, others pleading. Then one evening, a knock at my door. When I opened it, he was standing there, thinner, pale eyes hollow, like someone who hadn't slept in weeks. He held no flowers, no smile, just regret. Alice, he said, voice trembling, please don't close the door. I haven't said I'll let you in. He swallowed hard. I didn't know where else to go. I crossed my arms. You had options once. Remember, his face crumpled. I remember everything. I stepped aside wordlessly. He walked in slowly like a man entering a confession booth. The air between us was thick with the ghosts of things unsaid. He looked around my apartment, same couch, same frame photos, except one was missing. Our photo. Place looks the same, he murmured. It is, I said. You're the one who changed. He sat, exhaling shakily. Vanessa. She's not who she pretended to be. Controlling, jealous, violent. She broke my phone once because I texted Emma about work. And yet I said quietly, you stayed. I thought I could fix it. I thought if I worked harder, I cut him off. You sound exactly like I did when I was trying to please your mother. He looked down. I know. I thought you were small because you wanted peace. I didn't realize peace was strength. For a moment, I almost softened. Almost. But then memory did its job, reminding me of every time he'd made me feel like I wasn't enough. Sam, I said finally, I'm sorry for what you went through, truly. But you made choices, and those choices have consequences. He flinched. So that's it. Yes, I said simply. That's it. He looked at me desperate. You're cold. No, I whispered. I'm healed. He blinked, tears forming. I miss who we were. So do I said softly. But she doesn't live here anymore, and neither does he. We stood there for a long moment, the sound of rain filling the silence. Finally, I opened the door. You should go, Sam. He hesitated. Will you ever forgive me? I already did, I said. That's how I know I'll never let you back in. He stepped out into the rain. I closed the door, leaned against it, and let out a breath that had been stuck in my chest for 2 years. Outside, the rain fell harder, washing everything clean, even the ghost of what once was. For weeks after that night, he kept trying a text here, a voicemail there. Never angry, just desperate. But desperation isn't love. It's guilt wearing perfume. I didn't answer. He'd had his chance to fight for me when it mattered. Now I owed him nothing. Not comfort, not closure, not a soft place to land after the storm he walked into willingly. Then, one rainy Saturday, I saw him again. I was walking back from the market, umbrella half broken against the wind. When I turned onto my street there, he was sitting on the steps to my apartment, soaked to the bone, a duffel bag beside him. He stood as soon as he saw me. Alice. Sam. My voice was calm, practiced. He looked smaller somehow. Not just thinner, but folded, like someone who'd run out of pride. I didn't know where else to go, he said, his voice barely above the rain. I stared at him for a moment. You could have gone to your mother. She doesn't speak to me anymore, not since I left Vanessa. I blinked, surprised, despite myself. You left her? He nodded. For good. It took a lot. She didn't take it well. He shifted his sleeve, then, almost unconsciously, and I saw the faint bruise near his wrist. Something in my stomach twisted, but I didn't let it show. Come inside, I said, finally stepping aside. Just until the rain stops. He sat on the couch, dripping onto the rug. I handed him a towel and tea. He took both wordlessly. For a while, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the ticking of the wall clock, steady, indifferent. Finally, he whispered, "You were right about everything." I sighed. That's not something you should say, like a compliment. He looked up, eyes rimmed red. I thought you'd be happy I realized it. Realization doesn't undo the damage, Sam. It just means you finally caught up to what I already knew. He swallowed hard. I keep thinking about that night. When you said you were tired, I thought you were being dramatic. But now I get it. Loving someone who won't see you is exhausting. Something in me softened, not enough to open old doors, but enough to remember we'd once loved each other. I don't hate you, I said quietly, but I don't owe you my comfort either. He nodded, eyes glistening. I just wanted you to know I see it now, what I lost. I looked at him steady. You didn't lose me, Sam. You gave me away. That broke him. He covered his face, shoulders shaking. The sound was raw, not the polished regret of someone trying to make amends, but the ugly human kind that comes too late. I walked to the window, watching the rain smear the city lights. When you left, I said softly, I kept asking myself what I did wrong. Was I too safe, too predictable, not enough excitement? But now I know. I wasn't the problem. Your idea of love was. He didn't argue. Maybe he couldn't. When I turned back, he was staring at the teacup in his hands like it held the answer to something. He whispered, You were my peace. I smiled faintly. You mistook peace for boredom. That's on you. He stayed until the rain stopped. When he stood to leave, his duffel bag looked heavier than before. At the door, he turned. You're really not letting me back in, are you? I shook my head. You don't get to come home after burning it down. His throat worked. I wish I could undo it. I know, I said gently, but you can't. He lingered a second longer, as if waiting for me to change my mind. When I didn't, he stepped into the drizzle, pulling his hood over his head. I watched him walk away, the gray light swallowing his figure, until he was just another shadow moving through the city. And for the first time, I didn't ache. I didn't hope. I didn't imagine a what if. All I felt was a strange kind of stillness, the kind that comes when you finally stop bleeding. That night, I wrote a note in my journal. Closure isn't an apology. It's a door you lock yourself. Then I went to bed early. The rain had stopped, but its smell lingered clean, quiet, forgiving. For the first time in years, I slept without dreaming of him. A year passed. Time didn't heal everything. It just rearranged the pain into smaller, quieter corners of my life. I'd moved apartments, gotten promoted, and learned how to enjoy mornings again. Coffee without anxiety, music without memory. The city hadn't changed, but I had. Sometimes I'd pass couples on the street and feel that familiar tug nostalgia mixed with relief. I'd loved once with both hands open, and that love had burned me. But it also taught me what peace feels like when it finally returns. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday. I was waiting in line for coffee before work when a voice behind me said my name. Alice. I turned. Evelyn. For a second, I thought I was imagining her same pearls, same perfect posture, but older now, her eyes tired. Evelyn, I said evenly. It's been a while. She smiled faintly. You look well. I am. She hesitated. Sam told me you wouldn't talk to him. He's rebuilding his life. Slowly. I hope he is. She looked at me for a long moment, maybe searching for the bitterness she expected. When she didn't find it, she sighed. You were good for him, Alice. I see that now. I nodded. I know. The barista called my name. I picked up my cup, turned to her once more. Evelyn, do me a favor. Yes. Next time you meet a girl who doesn't fit your expectations, don't try to fix her. She might be the only person who ever loves your son for who he really is. Her eyes glistened. You really did love him. I did, I said softly. That's how I know when to let him go. And then I left her there, standing in a coffee shop that smelled like regret. That evening, I met Ethan, the man I'd been seeing for 3 months. He was an architect, thoughtful, calm, the kind of man who didn't need chaos to feel alive. When he talked, he looked at me, not his phone. When he laughed, it was genuine. He asked, rough day? Not really. I smiled. Just a ghost from the past. He chuckled. The haunting kind or the lesson kind? Lesson, I said, reaching for his hand. We sat there watching the city lights flicker beyond the glass. He told me about his next project about building homes that feel warm instead of just impressive. And I realized this was it. This was what it meant to be chosen, not tolerated. Ethan never called me comfortable. He called me steady. He said it like it was strength, not shame. A few weeks later, I got a message from Emma. He's dating someone new, a teacher. Kind girl. Looks like he's doing better. I stared at the message for a moment, then smiled. Good for him, I replied, and I meant it. Because some stories don't need revenge. They just need release. One Sunday morning, I found myself in my new apartment, barefoot sunlight spilling across the floor. I brewed coffee, opened my balcony door, and just stood there, feeling the wind on my face. A year ago, I was begging for someone to choose me. Now I understood that I only needed to choose myself. I picked up my phone, opened my journal app, and wrote, "Peace doesn't sparkle. It hums quietly. It's not found in excitement or ambition or someone else's validation. It's found in knowing that comfortable isn't boring, it's safe, earned, and deserved." Then I smiled, whispered the final line aloud, just for me. Comfort, after all, fits just right. Sometimes love teaches you through pain. Sometimes it returns to test if you've healed. And sometimes it just fades, leaving behind the calm you didn't know you were craving. So tell me, if someone who left you came back, would you open the door or let the rain wash them away? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.